So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cardano Community Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, David, project lead at the Litecoin Foundation. David, welcome.
Thanks, Denise. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Tell us a little bit about yourself there, David.
Yeah, so I am the project director for the Litecoin Foundation. I've been in that role now for about officially about a year, maybe a year and a half, and got into Bitcoin and Litecoin around September of 2017. So I've been around for when it spiked really high, and I've been around the entire time that it was in this bear market. So I'm pretty excited to see my first time going from the bottom part up during this next cycle. Not just for what I'm holding, but just in general. It's kind of cool to feel all the psychological pulls and tugs that come with that. So
Yeah,
you learn from those things. Yeah.
I can imagine, definitely. Now, of course, I can imagine a lot of people listening, and watching the podcast wondering, okay, Denisio, how does the Cardano Community Podcast come to speak to someone from the Litecoin community?
Yeah.
Now, actually, very simple. And to make that a bit clear, it all started with a tweet. Just bringing it up. When I saw your tweet, I'm like, yes, a lot of people are still holding Litecoin. Litecoin has been, um, again, during that period of 2017, a well spoken of cryptocurrency. So I do believe that there's a lot of people still holding even today. So that's the reason why I actually responded. And then, and then you mentioned I'm watching Cardano as well, and that put me to think, and I'm like, okay, David, we should talk because I would love to know from you what about Cardano actually intrigues or attracts you. What do you find attractive about Cardano?
I think there's a few things that sort of interest me about Cardano. Honestly, the fact that there's a peer review, there was a peer review when that was being constructed. I think that's um, something that not a lot of the projects that are out there have done. So I find that fascinating. You're getting people from many different facets of the globe contributing to this project as well, which I think is it's a great sign of diversity and teamwork. I find it interesting how you're able to do soft forks without disrupting the basic foundation of the project as well. So they're running separate,
Huh?
and I think just the project in general it's a bit of an anomaly to some of the other things that are out there, and I find it interesting. And just watching, just seeing where it goes and the things that happen to it. But as much as people get excited about it, I find it also sort of odd how it hasn't been adopted or integrated into more things at this point too. And I don't think that's necessarily from a lack of trying. I just don't know what exactly the barrier is. If there's something that perhaps you guys know about that I'm not aware of, but I just it's complexing to me, and so I follow it to see what exactly is the impetus to that. So it doesn't seem to get as much attention as a few others who, I mean, if we're being just completely honest,
Sure.
they just don't necessarily seem to be solving something. They're just there. Many times when you have a new space or even an old space, I guess it doesn't really matter, but you have people who create things. They create a problem to create things. So there really isn't necessarily an issue there to begin with. They just really wanted to create what they wanted to create. But Cardano seems to see some of the issues that perhaps were there early on within the space, and they try to solve those. I do like the due diligence part of it, and I like the fact also that supposedly it's solved one of the things that I think, and they probably won't admit it, but a lot of Bitcoiners and others in our space about quantum computing and being
Mhm.
able to crack, the encryption codes, and
Yeah.
supposedly Cardano's they have a way of making it quantum computing safe.
Yeah. Quantum
So
resistant. Yeah.
yeah, so I just I think it's smart how they go about implementing things.
Yeah.
So like I said, there's a review, and then I mean it's just due diligence, and you make sure you're putting one brick on top of the other where it's supposed to be,
Yes.
and
Exactly.
not hurrying up and make. I mean, I don't know if you've seen how houses are built in the States, but man, some of those things get thrown up so fast. I would not want to live in them. You know. And
No.
I used to live in Europe for about 15 years. So I was in the military, U.S. military, and my wife's German, so we spent 15 out of my 20 years in Europe,
Yeah.
most of it in Germany. And I would just always be fascinated at how strong these houses that are like 500 years old are. And really, all they do is they renovate, maybe the outside and the inside, but the core of it stays the same all the time.
Yeah. The
And in the
foundation.
US, yeah, you see houses from the 50s in the US, and I mean, they're just barely standing up. And
Wow.
so sometimes I think of projects in this space sort of like that. Somebody throws up a project real quick, they're hoping it'll catch on, and then they can probably improve on it from there. But the ones that, like, they take the time and they build the foundation properly and they calculate everything. I appreciate that part a lot.
Yeah. I agree with you definitely. I mean, we've definitely just not to be too critical, of course. On let's say Ethereum, is we have a lot to thank. We have Ethereum to thank for a lot. You know what I mean? For
Mhm.
being definitely front runners when it comes to showing the world the capabilities of blockchain and what that you can actually build applications upon that. But at the same time, just only being able to code and understand code is not everything. You know, you need a very good process behind of it. In order to make sure that what you are building, that it's secure and that it can last basically for for generations. And I think
Mhm.
that is something that when the team behind Cardano started, that's something that they really sat down and considered. Hey, we want to build something that's going to be here for generations.
Myself and a friend of mine, John Kim. I don't know if you know who John Kim is. He's a big time evangelist for Litecoin and cryptos in general. But him and I started a company to where folks can have any portion of their pay split off
Oh
from
yeah,
their regular, direct deposit. So that basically you get two direct deposits, and one will be in the fiat that you work for, and then the other gets converted automatically over to some cryptocurrencies that then can be sent to any wallets that you have.
yeah,
So um, originally that was supposed to be launched live at the end of last year, but we were trying to make sure everything is done absolutely the way it's supposed to be done.
yeah.
When you start talking about, because it's not something that's just going to be for the United States, we're trying to do it globally, like
Yes,
Cardano. So then you start looking into, each country is a little bit different. Financial regulations are a little different. And so, in order to make sure that what you're doing isn't violating any laws, and that you're doing everything on the up and up, you gotta, that takes time, right?
yeah,
And so, then you got to marry the back end with the money transmission portion of it, and so on and so forth. So we've kind of pushed it back a few times as well, just to make sure that we have everything lined up straight before we actually go live.
yeah,
I think ours is like right now it's the end of February, start of March before it actually goes like live. Like people can utilize it for their payroll, but
yeah.
we still end up having people like you said. You have companies that are waiting to utilize Cardano. We have employees who've been signing up, knowing that it's not here yet, but they're that anxious to
Yes,
use it.
exactly.
So it's like you have this like itching where you want to like deploy it, but it's just it's not quite there yet. So I completely relate with what you're saying. Makes
Yes,
perfect
yes.
sense. Yeah.
Would this be a blockchain based product or not a
It is
blockchain
not
based?
a blockchain based product per se, but the so what we've done is we've ended up sort of quote unquote partnering with certain companies within the space that we feel are one of the top ones in their area. So like, if you talk about lending, you're borrowing based off of your crypto, or earning interest off of it. A lot of people use like Celsius or BlockFi or Cred or a few others. There's actually quite a number of them. But so like, we'll sort of our preferred one would be Celsius. We sort of will like say, hey, look, people, if you're interested in using for that type of a thing, we recommend Celsius. But I mean, you can send them to any wallets. Matter of fact, like it's if you were to have maybe $100 out of every paycheck going towards Bitcoin, you can actually take that $100 of Bitcoin and send it off to as many wallets, as you want it to. So maybe some goes into an interest-bearing crypto wallet, and some of it goes into a cold storage wallet. Another one goes into, maybe you send some back home to somebody.
Yeah.
Whatever, right? So I think it's going to be really good. We're starting out with 3 core ones. So we have Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. Just like you mentioned in 2017, those are the ones that most people were
most spoken
talking about. Right. We chose them because they all sort of serve a different purpose at this time, and they're sort of they're the ones that are seen as the leaders in those areas. So Bitcoin for store of value, Ethereum for smart contract type things, and then Litecoin for actually spending. For coffees and whatever else. And so
exactly.
Over time, you anticipate expanding that to other projects and currencies, but it's always good to not, because the other goal is to bring fiat into the crypto space instead of it going out necessarily, right? And then also the other thing we want to do is we wanted to make it very simple for newer people coming in. Right, so like when you're trying to explain Cardano to somebody who's never been part of the crypto space before, it's really hard to break down how smart contracts work. Why do we need smart contracts? What's a blockchain? All those things, right? So when people have these financial products, I think we're getting there. It's getting better, but I mean, same thing happened to me when I got in. Coinbase was my entry point, and luckily it was fairly, they kept it simple for the most part. You have to sign up for it, but then once you're beyond that, it was the user experience is pretty good. You go to some other ones, man. I went to Binance the first time. I was thoroughly confused what I was supposed to be doing on there, and I actually had to watch a YouTube video on how to navigate Binance. But I sort of chalked it up as being like just an older guy trying to play in a newer sandbox. But come to find out, quite a few people, had that barrier, and it is a true barrier for a lot of people. So if you want to talk about having the 48-year-old truck driver from Nebraska want to try and have $100 of Bitcoin allocated to a wallet every payday without him having to worry about it, you had better make that user experience very basic, right?
Exactly.
So we tried to make it so it was not scary to people. One person commented when they looked at it once, just to help us test it out, they're like, this looks fairly late 90s on the user part of it, and we sort of did that on purpose, but it makes it simpler. So my argument to them was, well, Craigslist does pretty good in the United States, and that's about as 80s as you're going to get for something. And then can't remember the other one I used an example, but I said you have everybody from the youngest people to the oldest people using it, and that's what our goal was. So I don't know how you do that with the rebranding for like Cardano or other projects, but there's got to be a way to where you're including people other than the 18 to 30-year-old demographic. So if you can crack that nut, then
I'm pretty sure that McCann has major brands under their umbrella. Coca-Cola, I believe, is Microsoft. Really big stuff, right? So I'm pretty sure that.
So that's the other way. Yeah. So you're going to end up having to leverage their. Granted, they're bringing those in, but you're going to have to leverage them in order to reach out to those. To have those brands speak the Cardano language in a way that everybody gets it in a very basic way. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it can be harder than people probably anticipate sometimes.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I generally tend to have great trust, in people, and especially, when it comes to people who have been much longer in this space than I am. Who have a much better understanding of these kind of stuff. Especially in the field, like for instance, in the case of McCann, these guys have much better understanding of,
yeah,
how these kind of things works. How do you break down such complex matter, into understandable, information to everyone that everyone can understand. Even if you have to do that in phases or stages. But
mhm,
I'm pretty sure that these people know exactly how to reach, or let's say communicate exactly that what is needed, so that everyone grasp, what Cardano is, what we're actually aiming for, and why Cardano is really important for the ecosystem and blockchain in general.
yeah.
So yeah,
Just like you guys have been very slow and deliberate on certain things to make sure it's done right. Same
yeah,
with my research on projects that I actually invest in, and I've gotten to the point now where I believe that investing in Cardano is a good idea. So
yeah, yeah.
allocate those funds, and I'll figure out how to or how much I want to do, and I'll go from there. But yeah, I'm not some type of a tribalistic. There can
No,
be only one type of a mentality. Um, I
no, no.
do I do support Litecoin, and it is my favorite, and I believe the use case for it is global,
Yeah,
and so I push for that and help in every way I possibly can. But it doesn't mean that I'm not open to looking at and investing in other things as well. So
understood. Definitely understood that. I mean, hey, let's say there's enough fish in the sea, for everyone basically.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think eventually, uh, there will be definitely a few that will really be useful.
mm,
But uh, underneath, let's say the line, let's say a collaborative mentality will
yeah,
benefit
yeah,
everyone, in the end.
yeah. There definitely needs to be a thinning of the herd.
Yeah, I
I
think
just
so.
don't know if it's. I don't think it's going to be like some kind of instantaneous thing like some people would want. I think it's just going to be one of those where they sort of die out over a 5 or 6 year period, and
Yeah, I think so
it
too.
ends up being the ones who decide to collaborate or do things more in a conjoining type of a way that probably thrive. So yeah,
Correct. Correct.
it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how things evolve over the next few years.
I'm looking forward to that. Definitely. Hey, David, as I mentioned, we our time is limited.
Yep.
I really want to thank you, for giving us your time,
Yeah, I
and
appreciate you asking me on. I enjoyed it.
yeah, likewise. You also, enlighten me in certain points, and I think that, we tend to walk over certain things or not really stand still,
Hmm.
at certain aspects, but in terms of, the um, let's say, as I mentioned, earlier, having the collaborative, mentality. That's very important. It definitely will be a shakedown because, yeah, hey, what we've seen is just not, yeah, I don't believe it's sustainable. But that's something that will happen over time. And of course, I do believe definitely Litecoin has a place, up there because, hey, remember back in the days, there were only three main, let's say, cryptocurrencies spoken of, and Litecoin was among one of those, so being Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. But yes, indeed, Cardano, with what it's proven, to bring to the table, and until now has also steadily been delivering on, yeah, will also be a part of that, I believe. So
Yeah,
we'll join the round table.
sounds good. All
All right. Hey, take care
right.
out there, David.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Take care.
You're welcome. Take care. Take
All
care.
right.